I evicted my ex-wife from my parents' house. Be me, I'm 34, and right now my life is totally derailed, caught in a nasty tangle of legal problems. It feels like I've been perpetually hanging out in my parents' sprawling ranch-style house, which sits in the Denver, Colorado suburbs since way back in 2010. That's a huge chunk of my adult life I spent right there. The arrangement we had was honestly phenomenal, a seriously sweet deal. They gave me totally free lodging, but in exchange, I had to be the full-time on-site property manager. No rent, just responsibilities. My duties were a constant battle against entropy. This included fighting the notoriously aggressive growth of the lawn, constantly wrestling with the prehistoric, temperamental water heater, and generally acting as the primary defense against the entire structure, slowly collapsing into a pile of suburban dust. It was nonstop maintenance. Honestly, this deal was an incredible financial advantage for me, a true lifeline. Because I was completely unburdened by the usual heavy weight of housing payments, it allowed me to meticulously and aggressively stockpile savings for almost a decade. I was living financially free, setting myself up for the future. Or so I thought. Skip ahead a few years. I first met Emily, the woman who had become my ex-wife around 2014. Things got serious enough that she officially moved into the ranch house with me in 2016. We finally exchanged vows and got officially married in 2018. Naturally, two small children quickly made their debut shortly after the wedding. Consequently, the once relatively neat house rapidly became saturated with bright, primary-colored plastic playthings and, of course, the inevitable and permanent sticky stains that are the true marker of toddler occupation. This exact moment, the house filling up with kids and things, is precisely where the monumental self-deception and delusion truly began to take root. Emily developed a bizarre habit of incessantly referring to the property as our house. She'd do this frequently, making sure it was always said directly in front of friends, family members, and literally anyone else who happened to be listening. I was vigilant about correcting her every single time without fail. Hold up, it's absolutely my parents' house, not ours. We're strictly just managing the property and living here under their arrangement. I felt like a broken record, constantly stressing that we were merely custodians. Looking back now, with the benefit of hindsight and a hefty dose of cynicism, I realize she genuinely seemed to believe that her constant, repeated verbal use of the possessive pronoun, our, somehow constituted legally binding, indisputable evidence of joint ownership. She truly felt like she was staking a claim, sentence by sentence. Now, we fast forward dramatically to the painful present. Our marriage has completely and utterly imploded into a messy heap. Emily has initiated the formal process and filed for divorce. The impending brutal custody boss fight for the kids is still looming darkly on the horizon, waiting to consume all remaining resources. Then the entirely predictable yet still shocking shoe finally dropped. A completely formal and unavoidable eviction notice was physically taped right onto the front door. The legal notice, due to official requirements, meticulously listed every single person currently occupying the premises, including the children, all under my name. That's simply how the wretched legal paperwork is structured for tenants, even nominal ones. Emily picks up and reads the entire document, then turns and stares directly at me with a look of pure, horrified betrayal, as if I had personally just delivered some kind of cruel, world-ending death prophecy. Are you actually trying to kick me and your children out of our home so that you can just live here all by yourself? She screamed, the tears already welling up and beginning to track mascara down her cheeks. The accusation was sharp and completely unfair. I simply let out a long, weary sigh, trying to gather what little patience I had left. It's not my house, Emily. I need you to grasp that. It never, ever was mine. It belongs to my parents. They simply want their property back and completely unencumbered now that we are definitively splitting up and the arrangement has failed. Internally, I felt like the world's most miserable, saddest little monopoly landlord, forced into the agonizing position of trying to collect a non-existent rent on a property that I didn't even hold the deed to. The irony was a heavy, suffocating blanket. It absolutely killed me, slicing deep, that I was legally mandated to include the names of my own children on that cold, heartless eviction paperwork. But the legal reality left me zero alternatives. It had to be done to follow the letter of the law. But what truly boils my blood, what absolutely kills me with disbelief, is the sheer, unbelievable audacity emanating from Emily. For the entire duration of our relationship, she rarely managed to hold down a stable job for longer than 6 months at a time, struggling with commitment. My parents were constantly stepping in, graciously and without complaint, to provide totally free, dependable, full-time childcare, so she could pursue yet another one of her various short-lived creative passions or business ideas. They were her safety net. And now, this same person wants to actually launch a legal attempt to seize the property from the very parents who supported her and relied on her for years. She has barely lifted a single finger to meaningfully contribute to the house's upkeep, maintenance, or financial stability since the day she first moved in. Yet, here we are. The fateful, unavoidable day for the possession hearing finally arrives. So the day of the possession hearing finally arrives, and the scene is set inside the dreary Denver courthouse. Emily strolls in like she's starring in her own legal drama, proudly carrying this enormous, ridiculously sparkly binder. It was labeled dramatically in what looked like glitter pen, with the single word, evidence. Honestly, it looked more suited for a middle school project than a court proceeding. In stark contrast, I showed up with just a modest, boring folder. Inside were the hard, dry facts. Every single receipt for appliances I personally fixed or replaced, along with meticulous copies of every maintenance invoice I had paid over the years for the property. My parents were also present, looking completely unshakable. They didn't need binders. They brought the actual, undeniable deed to the house, a document that has been registered squarely in their name since 2003. They had this intensely stoic demeanor, honestly looking like they had been patiently waiting for this exact, final, painful court cutscene ever since the house was originally constructed and launched into existence. The judge, a middle-aged man I'll refer to as Judge Robert, radiated the distinct weary vibe of someone who has been forced to listen to desperate, spectacularly flimsy legal excuses every single weekday since the late 1980s. He appeared mentally exhausted, already checked out, and clearly just counting down the minutes until he could clock out at 5 o'clock and escape the domestic chaos. Emily was first up, instantly going full throttle into her dramatic, amateur lawyer performance. She started waving her arms and pointing aggressively and dramatically directly at me, Chris. This man has been the one personally paying the utility bills for that residence continuously since 2010. Moreover, he invested a staggering sum, over $60,000, Your Honor, in substantial home improvements and renovations. We installed brand new windows. A complete security system was put in. She paused for maximum effect. This was truly our family home, Your Honor. She finished with a flourish, desperately trying to inject the absolute maximum possible emotional pathos into that single possessive word, our. The implication was clear. Emotional investment equals legal equity. The opposing counsel, a dry, thoroughly professional woman hired by my parents, stood up instantly to object, without even letting the words settle. Objection, Your Honor. With all due respect, none of those specified expenses constitute a transfer of title ownership. Legally, they are considered costs incurred in exchange for the immense benefit of living rent-free or at a significantly reduced rate for over a decade. Judge Robert didn't even bother to lift his eyes from the stack of papers he was reviewing. His voice was utterly flat and devoid of inflection. "Ma'am," he addressed Emily, cutting to the chase, "do you possess any document, any deed, title, or formally recorded instrument that explicitly demonstrates or legally proves an ownership transfer to either you or Mr. Chris?" Emily completely froze. The color drained from her face, going utterly smooth and blank, as the amateur lawyer programming she'd loaded up instantly short-circuited and crashed. She had nothing. Judge Robert delivered the ruling with a weary finality. Objection sustained. I need to be perfectly clear. Paying the monthly electric bill absolutely does not legally equate to the receipt of a property deed. Seeing her main claim fail, she quickly pivoted to a new, noticeably shadier and clearly desperate character attack. He is constantly hiding assets by placing them in his parents' names. For example, the Buick he drives was titled in his mother's name until 2019, she insisted, implying financial fraud. I just sighed internally, shaking my head at the blatant distortion. The truth was simple. The car was an old family vehicle. I had purchased it from my parents in 2019, and I ensured the title was legally and properly transferred and signed over into my name immediately. It was a clean transaction. I wanted so badly to stand up and shout at her, "Look, none of this pathetic emotional alchemy or twisted financial suggestion manages to transmute a piece of drywall or a utility bill into a legitimate legal deed." Emily then dove even deeper into what I mentally termed vibes law. She pointed an accusatory finger at me again. He frequently sends money directly into his mother's bank account to cover bills and expenses. This whole situation was becoming a complete, embarrassing mess of half-truths. I confirmed the actual process clearly with the court. My personal credit card is, yes, set up to automatically cover the utilities, which, as stated, was the agreed-upon compensation for my residency and property management duties. However, the mortgage payment for the entire house, Your Honor, has been auto-drafted without interruption directly from my parents' checking account since the tail end of the Bush administration. Judge Robert finally sighed, a loud theatrical noise, and conspicuously glanced at the wall clock. The professional mediator sitting next to him visibly winced, clearly echoing the sentiment and desperate to finalize the matter and clock out himself. He leaned forward slightly. "Counsel," he stated firmly, addressing Emily's lawyer but looking directly at her. "We are strictly here today to determine possession based on verifiable legal ownership documents. not to conduct a review of deeply personal domestic feelings, shared credit card statements, or ancient paid-off car titles. He shut down her narrative decisively. Judge Robert leans visibly over the bench, delivering the final, inescapable question directly to Emily. His voice cuts through the room. Is there currently any deed, any formal document, any title, or any recorded legal instrument whatsoever that grants ownership of the specific property to either your name or to Mr. Chris's name? The silence that immediately followed was absolutely deafening, so profound and absolute that I honestly would swear the relentless fluorescent lights humming high above us temporarily ceased their operation. Judge Robert was clearly done wasting time. He didn't wait 1 second for an answer that wasn't forthcoming. He completely speed-ran the delivery of the final ruling, his voice clipped, definitive, and totally final. The recorded deed is irrefutably clear. Therefore, the motion for possession of the property is formally granted to the recorded owners, the parents. The judge slammed his gavel down once, a sharp, authoritative thwack. The official move-out date is now established. All issues pertaining to the division of marital property must be strictly dealt with and resolved within the family court jurisdiction. Immediate translation: Emily, you have suffered the massive, undeniable legal L. Your only remaining option is to vacate the premises right now. The court has spoken. The inevitable awful hallway cutscene immediately unfolded. She was standing isolated near the water fountain, crying silently, her face a mask of misery, frantically petting her own forearm in this repetitive, visibly nervous tick. So your parents just get to unilaterally seize my home after all this time? She whispered the question, completely ignoring the legal facts just stated. And what precisely are we supposed to do about the children, Chris? Where will they go? I made a deliberate effort to keep my voice even, flat, and completely controlled. The kids are not part of this proceeding, Emily. They are dealt with in the next courtroom. This entire hearing was exclusively about the legal possession of the physical house. She chose to ignore the truth completely. You're only orchestrating this whole nasty move so that you can move back in immediately and live there all by yourself, right? She accused, projecting her anger and suspicion onto me. That very evening, her Facebook profile immediately transformed into the digital equivalent of a medieval public stocks display. Her highly visible post read, "Evicted from our beloved family home, along with my 2 beautiful, innocent kids, by my selfish ex. Please, please pray for us during this devastating time." The accompanying comment section instantly became absolutely flooded with what I call wine ants, meaning easily provoked women who immediately dispensed terrible, legally useless advice alongside countless teary-eyed minion memes. I distinctly remember counting at least 3 different women who had the name Tammy who specifically offered to physically assault me on her behalf. The outrage was palpable and misplaced. The entire move-out week that followed turned into a draining, emotionally exhausting marathon of pure, concentrated passive aggression. Every interaction was laced with bitterness. Despite her attitude, I spent my evenings methodically helping box up every single one of the kids' toys, booking the necessary moving truck, and carefully labeling every last kitchen item. I was doing all the heavy lifting to facilitate her own move. The various neighbors witnessing the slow exodus consistently gave me the universal, "You kicked a helpless puppy" stare every single time I stepped outside the door carrying a box. Their judgment was based solely on her narrative. Emily, never missing a chance for performance, used the whole opportunity to film a tearful, shaky cam TikTok monologue about all the profound love and emotional effort she had supposedly poured into this house over the years. The day after, they finally pulled away. A professional contractor whom my parents had wisely hired showed up promptly to officially assess the house's current condition in preparation for serious, necessary renovations. He casually poked a section of the drywall with his pen, glanced dismissively around the main living space, and then stated with blunt finality, "Yeah, based on what I see here, this whole place is going to need quite a bit of remedial work and cleaning up." I had to restrain myself from yelling back, "You absolute genius. Thanks for that profoundly obvious insight, Captain Obvious." Just for the record, I want to reiterate, I had personally patched every piece of damaged drywall, swapped dozens of failing old electrical outlets, replaced 2 entire windows that were completely shot, and mowed that accursed lawn constantly until I was sure my soul had permanently separated from my body. But here's the cold, unfeeling, hard, legal truth, which is what the court cares about. None of that back-breaking manual labor automatically adds my name to the official county register of deeds. Zero sweat equity counted. A monthly trash collection bill recorded in your name does not automatically equate to a property deed in your name. Paying for a one-off water heater repair, even a significant one, does not legally grant you a secret equity stake in the property's title. If actual property deeds were truly awarded based on vibes, emotional attachment, or perceived domestic investment, Emily would have absolutely been the triumphant winner, and I would be homeless. The children thankfully thought the massive moving truck was some kind of exciting new spaceship, and were genuinely ecstatic about the whole new adventure. Their innocence was a small blessing. I carefully taped their names onto the last remaining moving boxes, feeling a sharp pang in my chest, like I was labeling internal organs being prepared for a painful but necessary transplant procedure. The house echoed one last hollow time after the truck finally pulled away and disappeared down the street. It was over. My parents quickly hired the contractor and immediately began the serious, long-delayed renovation work. I temporarily and indefinitely crashed in the spare bedroom at my brother's house. The impending custody court hearing is still looming ahead of me, a dark, heavy cloud threatening to unleash the next legal storm. But at least this massive, draining who owns the house boss fight is finally, definitively, and mercifully over. The relief is immense. All things considered, I am just incredibly lucky that my parents have been unwavering in their support for me through every single agonizing step of this nightmarish process.